Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Eyes on Seagrass in the Indian River Lagoon presentation. My name is Carolyn Kovach, and I am the Florida Sea Grant Extension Agent with University of Florida IFAS Extension in Flagler and Volusia counties. In our presentation today, I'm going to be talking a little bit about seagrass ecology, and then going into the different types of seagrasses that you can find in the Indian River Lagoon. Then moving into the threats to seagrass and seagrass loss that we have experienced here in the lagoon. And then finally transitioning over to the Eyes on Seagrass program and how to participate in the Eyes on Seagrass Blitz in November this year. So just briefly, I again am the Florida Sea Grant Extension Agent in Flagler and Volusia counties. And I just wanted to point out our other Sea Grant Extension agents that we have located within the Indian River Lagoon. Halia Beals is down in Brevard, just south of me. Then we have Vincent and Comio in St. Lucie and Martin counties. And we also, in addition to our county extension agents, we have regional specialized agents. And so we have Lisa Krimsky, who is our regional water resources agent. And so we are the Sea Grant agent team that is working on this current Eyes on Seagrass Blitz. So first of all, what makes a seagrass a seagrass? Despite the name, seagrasses are not actually grasses. They are flowering plants or angiosperms. They do spend their entire life submerged underwater. So as opposed to, if you see the marsh grasses that you see along the edges, these are plants that are going to spend their entire life under the water. And they are plants, so they do need sunlight to carry out their photosynthesis, and that is something that is important and will come up when we talk about some of the issues that seagrasses face. And they do have vascular tissues, so if you get up close, you can see the veins that are transporting water and nutrients throughout the plants. Our seagrasses have roots that are going to help hold them in place, and in addition to their roots, they also have these rhizomes that are going to be horizontal, connecting their different parts of the plant and their roots. And this creates a really great web that is going to help hold sediment in place. And also this is the way that they reproduce asexually. So our seagrasses can reproduce both sexually and asexually. They are flowering plants. Their flowers are usually not as obvious as flowering plants on land, and they might look pretty different. You can see that image on the bottom right-hand side of a flower of a shoal grass. But a lot of the way that seagrasses reproduce is actually through asexual reproduction of just those rhizomes growing out and creating new shoots. And so when you look out at a bed of seagrass, if you were able to look down below the sediment, you might realize that this might just be a couple of plants that are all connected and just continuing to grow out into a big area. But both of these reproductive strategies are important as part of reproduction for them. Our seagrasses are found worldwide. You can see here that they are found in tropical areas, but they also are found in a lot of cooler, temperate areas as well. The main thing is that they're generally going to be closer to shore because they need to be in shallow water. Again, they are plants, they're photosynthesizing, so they need sunlight. So they need to be somewhere that the sunlight is going to be able to penetrate down to the seafloor, and usually that's going to be closer to land or oftentimes in estuaries like we have near us. And there are about 50 different species worldwide, but we have about 7 species here in Florida. I have my asterisk just because it depends on who you ask for a couple of them. So our seagrasses that we have here in the Indian River Lagoon include turtle grass, manatee grass, shoal grass, Johnson seagrass, stargrass, paddlegrass, and then also our widgeon grass. I'm going to go through each of these a little bit. First up, we have our shoal grass, Halodule rhydi. This is the most common species of seagrass that you're going to find throughout the entire Indian River Lagoon. It has flat, thin blades, and you can see that central vein if you were able to get close. And it can grow to be pretty long, but you might also find it cut quite short, and that might be because manatees have come through the area and have had lunch. So manatees don't pull out the entire seagrass. They want to make sure that they're going to continue to have their food source as well. So they just kind of come along, and it might look like a lawnmower came through the area and chopped the seagrass down shorter. Another seagrass that we have in the area is our turtle grass, Thalassia testudinum. This is also a flat-bladed seagrass that can grow pretty long, but it is much wider than our shoal grass. And also you can see on the top there that the ends of it are nice and rounded. Again, as long as nobody's been having lunch. This species of seagrass we are going to find in the southern portion of the Indian River Lagoon. And if you happen to go down to the Florida Keys or places in the Caribbean, this is very common. We also have our manatee grass, Syringodium filiforme. This species is round. So if you were to look at the blades straight on, it is a cylindrical shape as opposed to being flat. So for these three that I've mentioned so far, we can remember them with pasta shapes. So our turtle grass, again, it is thin, flat, and wide, so it is resembling fettuccine. Our shoal grass is thin and flat, but a lot skinnier than our turtle grass, and so this is a little bit more like a linguine. And then finally, we have our manatee grass, which again is round and skinny, so that looks like a spaghetti. Unfortunately, I don't have seagrass pasta shapes for the rest of these, but this will at least help you out with these three that are a little bit similar. So all of those that we just discussed, they are going to have the blades coming directly out of the sediment or maybe sort of from a central node. Rupia maritima or widgeon grass, it also does have a flat, thin blade. However, it grows out in branches. So you can see here in the images that there are blades branching off throughout the entire length of that seagrass. And this is the one that sometimes people may or may not consider a seagrass. It's not a true seagrass in the sense that it's actually an aquatic plant. It can live in freshwater and in brackish conditions. Brackish meaning a mix of salty and fresh. But it is an important pioneer species, meaning it's one that can come in after disturbance and might be able to settle first. And then it does allow for other seagrasses to come and fill in near it. Also, something interesting is this is one of the few seagrasses that so far folks have had success growing from seed. So when people are trying to do restoration projects, usually we have to use plants that already exist. So we have to grow them asexually in nurseries to be able to outplant, but they have been able to grow rupia from seed, which is pretty cool. So this is a species you may find more in areas that have lower salinity. And I know that has been used in some restoration projects, even in stormwater canals or stormwater drain systems. And then in the areas right outside of those, it can grow pretty well. Now moving into our seagrasses that are shorter and have rounded, more oval-shaped blades. This is our stargrass, Halophila anglemani. This species is especially common right now up in the northern part of the lagoon. I know that here in Mosquito Lagoon, we've seen quite a bit of it recently. And it has 5 to 8 of these short rounded blades that grow from a single stem in a rosette or a star pattern. If you go further south into the lagoon, in the southern part of the Indian River Lagoon, south of Sebastian Inlet, you can find some other species of Halophila. These also have those more rounded blades, but you can see they don't have the rosette pattern. So our Halophila decipiens are paddle grass. These are about 1 inch long, broad, rounded leaves. And then our Johnson seagrass, also short, about 1 to 2 inches, usually paired leaves. You can see they're a little bit thinner here. And Johnson seagrass was originally believed to be an endemic species only found in southern Florida, and it was known as Halophila johnsonii. However, as we, always are learning more in science and having advanced technology and testing different things, they've determined that it is actually the same species as Halophila ovalis, which is native to the Indo-Pacific. So if you're looking at documents in Florida, we usually still see it listed as Johnson seagrass, Halophila johnsonii. However, if you are using the Seagrass Spotter app during the Blitz, that is a worldwide app, and it is going to reference the species by the scientific name of Halophila ovalis. I also just briefly wanted to mention that there is a new species of seagrass that has been documented down in Miami, Halophila stipulaceae. This is native to the Red Sea and Indian Ocean. And, so just found out that it's here. It's going to be being monitored and studied a little bit more. I don't think we would be seeing it in the Indian River Lagoon right now, but for those of you who live more in the southern parts of Florida, it's something to keep an eye out for. And then I also wanted to mention one species of macroalgae. So algae are not plants. However, they do photosynthesize, so they are also going to be. In this case, we've got a green algae. It's got those chloroplasts. It is photosynthesizing and using the sunlight just like seagrass. However, some differences include that it doesn't have vascular tissue. So if you look at those blades, you'll see that they are just a flat green color, a bright dark green, but there's no lines of the veins going through it. They also don't have true roots, so they don't uptake their nutrients through the roots. They're going to have a hold fast, so they still might be attached to the sediment or to rocks or something. And they can provide some ecosystem services. You can see there's a nice dense bed of it on the right-hand side there. And so small fish or shrimp or other little organisms might be using that as a habitat. However, unfortunately, it does not replace the food source that seagrasses provide for animals like our manatees. And when we had our big, seagrass die-off followed by a manatee mortality event a couple of years ago, they did actually find some of the manatees that had a lot of caulerpa in them, and they found toxins that were associated with a buildup of toxins that are produced by the caulerpa prolifera. So unfortunately, it can serve some useful benefits in our ecosystem, but is not going to be able to be something that replaces it. And so it is something we still want to be on the lookout for and seeing how it's moving throughout the lagoon. All right, so those are different species of seagrasses, but why do we care about seagrasses? I've already mentioned a few things as I've been talking because it's really hard to just not even talk about why they're important as you're describing the structure and the function of them. And basically, they're providing these different ecosystem services, and these are services and goods that are going to benefit humans, and they also benefit the other wildlife in the lagoon. So some of these include creating habitat for other species to live. You could see that image on the left-hand side. We've got a seagrass that's curled up around some of the seagrasses there. Baby fish, shrimp, crabs, everybody's going to be out there. The majority of our fish that we go out and fish for recreationally and commercially spend the early part of their life in an estuary. And so when those small fish are in there, they need somewhere to hide from larger predators while they're growing up, and seagrasses are very important for that. Seagrasses are also really great at sequestering carbon. So as they are photosynthesizing, they're taking in carbon dioxide and they're producing oxygen, which is also helpful. But in taking in that carbon dioxide, they're very good at storing it and removing it from the system, putting it away. So that's really helpful as well when we're talking about the importance of seagrasses for mitigating climate impacts. As seagrass are photosynthesizing, they're also going to be taking up nutrients. And so they are going to end up reducing that nutrient load as they use the nitrogen and phosphorus in the system, therefore improving the water quality. The roots and rhizomes are super helpful with holding that sediment down, and that is going to help prevent erosion. And it's also going to help improve water clarity because the sediment won't be moving around as much when you have waves or when you have wind. I experienced this firsthand in an area that I lived. There was some seagrass, and it was in a very shallow area. Unfortunately, we had some very hot conditions, and during low tide, that seagrass ended up becoming exposed, getting too hot and dying. And over the next couple of months, we saw the seagrass get removed from the area once it died and saw the transition of how the waves and currents came into that area and made it go from about 1 foot depth to 3 or 4 feet. And that then allowed the waves to come through that area even further and end up causing more erosion on the shoreline behind that, affecting the property behind that as well. So it's really interesting to watch this cascading effect of what happened once the seagrass was removed from the system. And then finally, a food source. So again, we know our manatees rely on our seagrass, definitely very important for them. And there's also many other species, waterfowl and other creatures in our lagoon that are going to rely on it for a food source as well. Unfortunately, these seagrasses have been declining worldwide. So this image is from a review paper that looked at all the different studies that were examining seagrasses, and they determined whether the study saw an increase, a decrease, or no change in the seagrasses. And so the majority, unfortunately, you can see there's a little bit more red, which means there was a decrease than there is yellow or blue. There were some cases where we either saw no changes or we saw increases in seagrass, which is great. But worldwide, this loss of seagrass does seem to be, it is a big problem. And it's happening here in the Indian River Lagoon. And there are different reasons for seagrass depending on where you are in the world. Um, but the three things that are all related here in the Indian River Lagoon, I have them in bigger font because they're the main issues here. Nutrient loading, which leads to algae growth, which leads to increased turbidity. So as we have nutrients coming into the system, so nitrogen and phosphorus, if we have excess nitrogen and phosphorus, usually in our area, that's coming from leaching from septic systems and also coming from fertilizers from lawns and other places on land. And that is then going to fuel algae because our plants do need some nitrogen and phosphorus, but they're pretty efficient. They don't need a ton of it. And so if we're putting more in than they need, that's going to become fuel for algae. Algae are able to grow and reproduce very quickly. And so if they have the conditions of nutrients and sunlight, we can have algae blooms. And once you have a bloom, it is going to decrease the clarity of the water, increasing the turbidity. And so you're no longer going to have sunlight that can reach all the way to the sea floor, to the seagrass, and those seagrasses will die. So that's the main issue going on here in the Indian River Lagoon. However, there are other issues that seagrasses face. That image on the top left is of boat propeller scars. So it's an area that has some nice, dense, healthy seagrass beds, but unfortunately there are boaters going through that maybe don't know the area or weren't paying attention, and it was too shallow, and their boat propeller has ripped up the seagrass and made it a deeper section there. Also, increasing temperatures, the story of the seagrass that I saw disappear, a lot of that had to do with very warm conditions, as salinity variation, disease in some places, or again, changes in the sediment can also affect our seagrasses. So here in the Indian River Lagoon, we are going all the way from Mosquito Lagoon up to the north, also Banana River, and down into the Indian River. And so this whole area I'm referring to is the Indian River Lagoon. And there are a bunch of different blooms that have taken place recently, and some of them affected the entire lagoon, and others maybe affected the northern or southern portions more. The St. John's Water Management District has been studying the seagrasses in addition to, algae and water quality in our lagoon for a long time, and so we do have some really great data sets from them. And in 2011, that is when they saw a really big algae bloom, and they called it a super bloom because at the time it was the most they'd ever seen. The following year, there was also a brown tide in the northern Indian River Lagoon. So brown tide just meaning there was a species of algae that when it had the big bloom, it made that water look really dark and brown, kind of like you can see in that image right there. We had a couple years that were okay, and then in 2016, another major brown tide that especially affected Banana River. A couple years that were okay, and then in 2019 and 2020, we had really big blooms, and there were a mix. There were several different species that all were blooming at the same time. So again, the problem with this is once we have the algae blooming, it's going to reduce the water transparency and block the light to the seagrass. In addition, it could end up having some effects such as decreased oxygen, which can end up impacting a lot of the other wildlife. For example, I say that, the fish kill that happened in Banana River. And so this is some of the data from the St. John's Water Management District. They survey aerially every 2 years. And so that's what those green bars are showing is the extent of seagrass. But then also there are 100 different places that they do transects where they're going to get in the water and look at the density of the seagrass, the height of the seagrass. And so that is what's giving us these other lines, giving us a better idea of even if there's seagrass in the area, how much seagrass really is there. And you can see that unfortunately that has especially declined over the past several decades. Another way of looking at that here in this map, again, in 2009 on the left, the green being the aerial extent of the seagrass, and by 2021, a significant decline in that other than some areas over there in Mosquito Lagoon. It can be, very disheartening to see all of these, the data and the images of how much seagrass we've lost. And unfortunately, sometimes it takes things getting really bad before people pay attention. And it's unfortunate that we got to the really bad part. But the good news is that there has been a lot more attention on the Indian River Lagoon in terms of our water quality and our seagrass and the importance of both of those. And so there has been a lot of effort in recent years from environmental organizations, from local governments, and from our state government to try to improve the situation. And so there's, multiple ways that we have to go at this because we want to make sure we're getting the seagrass, but we also need to ensure that the entire lagoon system can actually support seagrass. And so a lot of these efforts have been focused on the water quality. One is septic to sewer conversions. So if there are areas that have neighborhoods right on the water that are on septic systems, that nitrogen is going to be leaching out from that septic system right into the lagoon and increasing that nutrient load. And so I know in my area, Oak Hill recently did a big septic to sewer conversion on some neighborhoods that were located on canals. So that's removing a lot of nitrogen that would have been going into the system. And there are a lot of grants right now trying to get local communities to be able to do that. There's also fertilizer ordinances and education. So I know here in Volusia County, we do have a fertilizer ordinance that people should not be putting fertilizer out during the rainy season. And we also have the Green Volusia team that is doing education about that, making sure that folks know to use a slow release fertilizer and to not fertilize during the rainy season. We want to make sure that that fertilizer is going to stay in the lawn and not get washed out into the lagoon. And then part of that, again, is controlling that stormwater runoff. So that image on the left-hand side is of a recent rain garden that was created in Brevard County. Again, utilizing plants and making sure that water isn't running straight out into the lagoon, that it has a chance for those nutrients to be used first or to settle out into the system. So a lot of that is looking at water quality, which is really awesome. And then we also do have folks working on the actual seagrass restoration part. We're at the beginning stages of that in a lot of places, although some folks I know down in Brevard have already done some planting. And so if there's an area that there is no seagrass there to be able to reproduce sexually or asexually, we need to give it a head start, right? We need to give it something to work from. And so part of that is that there are now 5 seagrass nurseries that are either up and running or in the process of getting there throughout the span of the Indian River Lagoon. That image on the bottom right is of the brand new facility for a seagrass nursery down at Marine Discovery Center in New Smyrna Beach. And so these will then allow there to be those seagrasses available for organizations that are doing restoration. So I just want to highlight that there is a lot of good work that is being done. And thankfully, in the past couple of years, we've actually been seeing an increase in seagrass. So this image on the right-hand side shows all of those little dots as the locations for the St. John's Water Management District seagrass surveys that are done twice a year in most locations. And I had the opportunity to join our local team in 2022. That was my first time joining in, and that was the first time that we saw seagrass. We were so excited, that we saw stargrass. We'd been seeing seagrass. Shoalgrass was in our area, but we definitely saw an increase in the amount of shoalgrass the past couple of seasons. And also we saw stargrass for the first time. So it was exciting to see, a new species that was also contributing to the coverage in our area. And there have been other anecdotal reports of increases in seagrass in several parts of the Indian River Lagoon. Again, it's great that we have St. John's Water Management District doing these surveys. They get their aerial twice a year, and they get these in-water surveys, aerial every 2 years, and the in-water surveys twice a year. And that covers a lot of area, but there's also obviously some gaps there in terms of locations that people aren't able to get out to, or what might be happening in between those different timeframes. And so that was the kind of the question of like, well, where are we right now? We've been seeing an increase, just based on our observations or what other folks have been telling us. But Florida Fish and Wildlife came to us and said, do you think this program, I'm going to talk about Eyes on Seagrass here in a second, might be able to help us fill in some of these gaps and help us build this better understanding? So that led to the new Eyes on Seagrass part that's going to be happening in the Indian River Lagoon. Let me back up for a moment. Eyes on Seagrass is a participatory science program where residents in the area are getting out into their local estuaries to monitor the status and health of seagrass in Florida. And it started out in Charlotte County in 2017. And then it also spread throughout the Tampa Bay area, as well as up in the Panhandle. And so this is usually based on in-water methods, similar to the St. John's Water Management District surveys, but a little bit simpler, but using quadrats and collecting that underwater data. And this is something that we are planning to bring to the Indian River Lagoon next year. So definitely, if this is something you're interested in participating in, please make sure that you fill out our volunteer form, so we have your contact information and can reach out as more opportunities arise. But before we start getting out in the water and, putting people out there, we partly wanted to know what are the areas that we should be focusing on. And so that is one of the goals of this Eyes on Seagrass Blitz in the Indian River Lagoon that we're going to be doing. We are trying to obtain data on the current most up-to-date range of seagrass in the lagoon. And we are going to use this to inform the planning for the Eyes on Seagrass transect sites. And it's also information that we're going to share out with Florida Fish and Wildlife, with organizations that are doing restoration. And so that way, we just have a better idea of what's going on right now, planning out for us as well as other organizations. So the Eyes on Seagrass Blitz in the Indian River Lagoon is a 2-week effort to collect data on the presence and the absence, we also would want to know where it's not, of seagrass by species in the Indian River Lagoon using an app called the Seagrass Spotter app. And anybody who is out on the water can report data. So I'll go through in just a moment the steps on how to participate, but basically it is downloading this app. Anytime you're out in the water between November 1st and 15th, look out for seagrass. And if you see seagrass, you're going to take a photo and report it in the app. And even if you don't see seagrass, you can report that too. So whether you're out on a boat, if you're a fisher and you're out on the water, we appreciate, just taking a little bit of time. If you're at your fishing spot, looking around there. If you are a kayaker or a paddleboarder, you can also go out and explore and check out, what might be growing in your local area as well. So the Seagrass Spotter app, you can find that whether you have an Apple or Android phone, you can find that in your app store. It is free and you will have to just create an account. It will ask you probably if you want to allow that app to use your location, and please do say yes to allow it while you're using the app, because it will then use the GPS in your phone to pinpoint the location on a map of where you took your photo. You will also want to make sure that you review the Eyes on Seagrass Blitz protocol. I'm basically going to walk you through this in the next couple of slides, but we do have a PDF version that has all of these directions and screenshots, so you can refer back to that. And I also have a 1-page version that you can print out and take out with you on the water. You'll also want to just review the Eyes on Seagrass species identification, which we went through earlier in this presentation, but we have it available so you can either download it and print it out or save it to your phone for reference out on the water. And then again, if you can complete our Eyes on Seagrass volunteer form, we really appreciate that. It'll allow us to follow up with you to see if you have feedback on how this program went, and also, again, keep you informed if you are interested in volunteering with any of our programs in the future. And finally, please do make sure that you have all your proper safety gear on your vessel, including your personal flotation devices and your whistles, and also make sure that those weather conditions are going to be safe for you to be out in the water. You want to check your tides and your currents and your weather. If it is windy, it's not going to be very fun for you, and also it's going to be a lot harder to see into the sea down into the water to find the seagrass. So once you're out on the water between November 1st and 15th, 2024, you are going to look out for seagrass. If you see it, open up your app and go to the bottom. You'll see right there, it says new sighting, where there's that camera image. You're going to click that. And now it's going to ask you for a new sighting, and click take a sighting. You want to then take the photo, if you can, looking straight down. If the glare isn't working or whatever you need to do to get a photo to show that there's seagrass, do whatever you need to do, but ideally we're going to be looking straight down on it. Once you take that photo, it'll have the little icon saying spinning and getting location. Again, it's using the GPS from your phone, so that way it'll show up automatically on the map of where that photo was taken. If you want to take a photo but not have to deal with putting in the data until later, or if you want to do it through their website, seagrassspotter.org, you can also do this through the website. The only thing is you'll then have to put your location on the map manually. So if that's the case, you want to make sure that you're either recording your GPS coordinates or you know where you are. You have some landmarks of that you're on the southern tip of a certain peninsula, so that way you can reference that later on. Once you put your image in, it's going to ask you to identify the species. So you can see that there are a lot of options here, and they are all the Latin scientific names. So there is a little option on top there that says help me identify, and they have some steps to go through. We found that to be a little bit confusing at times, partly because there's a lot more species here than what you find in Florida. This is a worldwide list. And so we put together a little Eyes on Seagrass species ID guide that we recommend that you use. It has just the species in Florida, and we've got the scientific names on top, as well as the common names and image, and a couple of descriptive features. That's probably going to be a little bit easier, but you're welcome to use whichever you prefer. So you're going to click the species you see. If there are multiple species, you can click multiple boxes. And then it's going to ask you, how sure are you about your species identification? So this is where if you see seagrass and you're confident seagrass, but you're really not confident in your ID, it's okay. Still take the picture, still submit it. You can just click the box that says not very sure. If you have a good look at it and you feel pretty confident in your ID, then you can choose whatever the most appropriate category that you feel fits how sure you are about your identification. Here is our species ID guide. Again, we'll make sure that this is available on our website for download, or I'll post this link wherever this video is posted as well. Just a great reference for you to have out in the field. Once you have put in your species, this will pop up saying, thank you for adding your sighting. Before you upload it, would you like some more information? It's optional, but would help us understand your sighting. So you can just hit upload now and you're done. Thank you. Or if you go to add more information, a whole plethora of questions will pop up. There are many more than you need to worry about answering. We just have 3 that we would like you guys to answer. The first is, how extensive was the seagrass? So if you click on the little arrow next to that, this pop-up drop-down menu will pop up. And so you can see, you can choose that the seagrass was washed up on shore if you're walking the shoreline, that you saw a small patch less than 1 meter squared, which is about less than 3 feet, that you saw many small patches, you saw a large patch, but it was still less than 10 meters squared, or less than about 33 feet. There were many large patches, or you had either a small or large contiguous area of the seagrass. So this just gives us a good idea of, you're reporting seagrass, but was it just this much? Or was it, an entire field of it? The next question is, how did you observe the seagrass? I think most of you all will be choosing this option because you'll likely be in a boat, kayak, or paddleboard. However, if you were walking at low tide or snorkeling, feel free to record that as well. Then you're going to drop down to the 4th question, which is, what is the depth of water that the seagrass was recorded in? I think probably most of us will be seeing seagrass in fairly shallow areas. Just to note again, when you are in a boat, if you're looking for seagrass, you're going to be in a shallow area. Watch that trim of your engine and make sure that we are not accidentally contributing to any seagrass scarring. But if we are in less than 1 meter, again, that's about 3 feet. That would be that first choice. Or if you're in a little bit deeper water, between 1 and 3 meters, that is between about 3 and 10 feet. If you're in your boat, you can use your depth finder, or if you're paddling, you can maybe use your kayak paddle and approximate about how deep that water is. Don't need to worry about the rest of the questions. So you can scroll to the bottom and then click upload now, and you've submitted. Thank you. If you're out there and you don't see any seagrass, you can still report a sighting. You're going to report what is called an absent sighting. So when you go to new sighting, you'll say either seagrass sighting or absent sighting. And if you are reporting an absent sighting, it's very similar. You're going to take a photo and answer a couple of questions, slightly different questions. One of them is, what is the status of the seagrass here? If you're out in the water and you don't know the area, you're just going to say don't know. But maybe you're a fisher who has been going out to this area for a very long time, and you have some knowledge of the area. Do you know seagrass has never been here, or seagrass was here previously, but now it isn't? That's great information to know if you have it. And then also the third question, what is the dominant habitat type? So do you see bare sediment? Do you see other algae? Do you see oyster reef? So before you submit an absence sighting, do make sure that you can see all the way down to the seafloor. If it's just too dark and you can't see it, then please don't report an absence sighting there. If you see the green algae caulerpa, you will actually report that as an absence sighting because it's not a seagrass. So you'd report an absence sighting, take a photo of that caulerpa, and then select for your habitat type, the green algae/seaweed. And then there's a section for comments, so you can write whatever you need to there. In this case, I would write caulerpa prolifera is present. And then I just wanted to mention the seagrassspotter.org website. So this is the website associated with the app. Again, if you prefer, you can create your account and use the website for uploading data as well. I do think the app on the phone is a little bit more straightforward. So if you have access to that, I do recommend that, but both are options. However, I wanted to also say, make sure you guys check out this website, especially over the first couple of weeks of November, because right now you can see there's just one little red dot in New Smyrna, one down in Cocoa, one looks like down in Vero. So those are the sightings of seagrass that have been put into the system so far. And so we look forward to seeing these red dots pop up throughout the time period, and they go in instantly. So you're able to go, you can go look and see maybe where people have already been reporting, whether you want to try to check out an area that people haven't been. Don't worry about that. You're welcome. You know, it's okay if we have repeat data from areas that are popular areas that people go out, but you can check that out. It's all open access data. So you'll be able to look and see which species were observed in which areas. So yeah, it's a really awesome resource, and it's cool because, you know, it's not just something that we can look at, but you guys can look at as well. And the website has some good additional instructions and educational information if you're interested. So with that, I want to encourage you all to check out our website that has all of the different documents I've referenced here, our ID guide, the instructions written out, the volunteer form. You can find all of that on our website here, bit.ly/EOS Blitz, or Eyes on Seagrass Blitz. And also wanted to just give you guys the contact information for your respective agent in the Indian River Lagoon. Again, I am in Volusia County. We have Holly Abeles in Brevard. We don't have a Sea Grant extension agent, but we do have a wonderful natural resources extension agent. And so she is helping us out in Indian River. That is Andrea. And then down in Martin and St. Lucie counties, we have Vincent. And again, Lisa Krimsky is going to be able to help us out anywhere that you are in the Indian River Lagoon, especially with some specific water or harmful algal bloom related questions. She's a great contact as well. So please reach out to any of us if you have any questions. And thank you. We hope that you enjoy participating in the Eyes on Seagrass Blitz in the Indian River Lagoon.